On November 22, 1941, the Pearl Harbor Strike Force began to assemble at Tonkin Bay in the Kuriil Islands north of Japan. The Japanese had undertaken their preparations with the utmost secrecy. In order to hide the assembling of the strike force, ships back at the inland sea had been generating false radio traffic in an attempt to fool American intelligence into believing that the Japanese carriers were still in home waters. Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo, Commander-in-Chief of the 1st Air Fleet, was overall strike force commander. Nagumo, who was Japan's top carrier commander, did not believe in the Pearl Harbor raid. He had argued with Yamamoto that his carriers were very vulnerable to American counterattack and could be sunk with 1 or 2 well-placed bombs or torpedoes. He had originally wanted to use his carriers to cover the southern push, but late in the summer of 1941, he reluctantly accepted the idea of the Pearl Harbor plan. Yamamoto, who originally sought the job but was refused, had considered replacing Nagumo with someone more enthusiastic about the operation, but decided against it because he didn't want to upset morale at the last moment. Nagumo was a popular commander. For the Pearl Harbor strike, the 1st Air Fleet was reduced by 2 battleships, 4 heavy cruisers, and a squadron of destroyers. This conserved fuel and minimized the risk of detection. There was also an addition of about 20 planes and pilots, which brought the total number of pilots to slightly more than 400. This was nearly the entire contingent of Japan's first-line carrier pilots. After modifications, the strike force included all of Japan's 6 fleet carriers, 2 fast battleships, 2 heavy cruisers, 1 light cruiser, and 9 destroyers. Admiral Yamamoto issued sailing orders to Nagumo on November 25th. The strike force was to sail on the following morning, refuel at a predetermined site on December 3rd, and if not recalled, launch the Pearl Harbor attack as scheduled. They were then to retire to the west in order to prevent a counterattack and return to Japan. The strike force left at 9 a.m. the next day in extremely foggy weather. Their course was through a deserted region of the North Pacific, south of the Great Northern Circle, and north of the shipping routes between Hawaii and Japan. The fog interspersed with winter gales made it difficult to stay in formation, but provided an excellent shield for avoiding detection. On December 2nd, after the American ultimatum was rejected and the final decision to attack the United States was ratified by the Imperial Conference, Yamamoto sent Nagumo the coded message, "Climb Mount Niitaka," which constituted the final order to carry out the attack. On December 3rd, the wind abated and refueling was accomplished without difficulty. With smoother seas, the task force increased speed in order to reach the launch site on schedule. On board the Akagi, Admiral Nagumo was mainly concerned about 2 things: pre-strike detection and whether the American carriers would be in the harbor at the time of the attack. By December 6th, he knew the answers. The normal commercial radio broadcasting from Oahu indicated that he was still undetected, and a message from Tokyo informed him that there were 9 battleships at Pearl Harbor, but no carriers. At 5:50 a.m. on December 7th, the strike force reached its launch point about 220 miles north of Oahu and turned into the wind. The first plane took off just minutes after 6 a.m. The first to be launched were 45 Zeros from all 6 carriers. One Zero crashed on takeoff and another aborted with engine failure. Following them were 89 Kate attack planes from Akagi, Kaga, Hiryu, and Soryu. 49 of these were armed with 800-kilogram armor-piercing bombs made from 16-inch battleship shells, and 40 were carrying torpedoes modified with wooden fins to allow dropping in the shallow waters of Pearl Harbor. While the Kates were being launched, the Shukaku and Zuikaku were adding 51 Val dive bombers, each armed with a 250-kilogram general-purpose bomb. The 183 first wave planes were launched and farmed up by 620. Led by Commander Mitsuo Fuchida, they set course for Oahu. The second wave of strike planes was then raised to the flight deck, and launching began at 7:15. 36 Zeros were launched from Akagi, Kaga, Hiryu, and Soryu, followed by 80 Val dive bombers armed with 242-kilogram armor-piercing bombs. 2 of these Vals had to abort. Simultaneously, the Shukaku and Zuikaku added 54 Kate attack planes carrying 250-kilogram general-purpose bombs. These 168 planes farmed up and headed for Oahu around 7:30. Two waves, totaling 351 planes, were winging their way to their targets. The 89 Kates in the first wave, 40 with torpedoes and 49 with armor-piercing bombs, would attack the battleships. The Val dive bombers and Zeros of the first wave would attack the airfields of Hickam, Wheeler, Ford Island, Barbers Point, and Kaneohe. The second wave Val dive bombers would attack cruisers, destroyers, and any battleships that needed to be finished off. The Kates and Zeros of the second wave would hit the airfields to mop up any remaining aircraft not destroyed by the first wave. As Pearl Harbor came into view of the first wave at 7:53, Fuchida sent the message Tora, Tora, Tora to Nagumo, announcing that the Americans had been taken by surprise. The first bomb exploded at 7:55, and the first torpedo was launched 1 minute later. Of the 40 torpedo bombers, 36 managed to launch at a target, while 4 were stopped by anti-aircraft fire. There were 19 hits on 7 different ships. 7 hits on the battleship West Virginia, 5 hits on the battleship Oklahoma, 2 hits on the battleship California, 1 hit on the battleship Nevada, 1 hit on the cruiser Raleigh, 1 hit on the cruiser Helena, and 2 hits on the decommissioned battleship Utah. All 49 of the high-level Kate bombers dropped their armor-piercing bombs against the battleships. There were 10 hits on 5 different ships. 2 hits on the battleship Arizona, 2 hits on the battleship Tennessee, 2 hits on the battleship Maryland, 2 hits on the battleship West Virginia, and 2 hits on the repair ship Vestal, which was berthed next to the Arizona. The 51 Val dive bombers from the Shukaku and Zuikaku, along with the 45 Zeros of the first wave, attacked Army and Navy airfields. About 65 Army and 93 Navy planes were destroyed on the ground, with dozens damaged. The first wave attack was over at about 8:25, and except for a few stragglers, the planes headed back to their carriers. Of the 183 first wave planes, only 9 have been lost: 5 Kates, 3 Zeros, and 1 Val. At 8:40, the second wave arrived. 78 Val dive bombers armed with 242-kilogram armor-piercing bombs attacked ships in the harbor, while 54 Kates and 36 Zeros bombed and strafed the airfields again. The Vals went after the crippled Nevada attempting to flee the harbor and hit her with 5 bombs, causing her to beach. The battleship Pennsylvania in dry dock was hit with 1 bomb, causing minor damage. Several bombs were wasted on the already doomed Arizona. 3 light cruisers and several destroyers were also hit and severely damaged. At the airfields, with most of the planes already destroyed, the Kates concentrated on hangars and other buildings. The second wave added very little to the carnage because the anti-aircraft gun crews were able to get organized during the 15-minute break between the 2 attacks. They managed to shoot down 14 Vals and 6 Zeros. At about 9:45, the second wave headed back to the carriers, with the last plane landing about noon.
That's all for this episode. We'll see you in the next one. In the meantime, don't forget to check out our special video report entitled The Dauntless Scoreboard. It diagrams all of the bomb hits made on each of the 4 Japanese carriers, naming and showing a photo of each successful dive bomber pilot. If you haven't seen the Dauntless Scoreboard yet, just go to midway101.com. It's free, with no credit card or email address required. When you get there, just click the red button at the bottom right of the home page.